The new civilization sucks, or maybe it's great. You know, everyone has their own opinions, and here are 10 things that I love and 10 things that I hate about Civilization VII after spending a good amount of time playing the game before its release. So let's get through 10 things that I do actually like and love about Civilization VII. One is the city building. Me being a city building gamer, I do feel more attuned to the more complex and detailed city building of the cities in Civilization VII. Actually placing down the buildings and having unique districts form based on the buildings you place, really sort of designing your cities and growing your cities in that way, it feels very satisfying to me. So I personally do really like the new and expanded city building mechanics in Civ VII. Second thing that I like about Civ VII is the unique gameplay objectives and the unique gameplay in every age. The Antiquity Age, the Exploration Age, and the Modern Age, they have their own unique objectives and playstyles and things to do in each age. So in the past Civilization games, one game was pretty much one run, where now it feels like it is split up to 3 sections, and some people like this and some people don't, but I do feel like it does provide more things to do. Like in the Antiquity Age, you are building lots of wonders, it's something that you can go for, whereas if you're still going culture in the Exploration Age, it's the religion gameplay, and more relic collection. But then there's also the treasure fleets that come in for the Exploration Age, and the whole new world discovery and expansion. And then when you get into the Modern Age, there's the factory resources, and the playstyle just changes up. So what you're doing in each age, even if you're going down the same sort of path, if you're going like economic, you're doing somewhat different things in each age, and that for me makes it feel fresher and more interesting as you go through the game. Third thing that I like about Civilization VII are the Civ-specific unit and building designs. And this is something that people do really love. It's often modded into the older Civ games, where each nation, they have their own specific unit design, not just for their unique unit and their special units, but all their units. A tank from America is gonna look different than a tank from Prussia. If you're doing a Prussia versus France battle and you both have land ships, the land ships look different on both sides. And it's not because they're unique land ships, they just look different. A warrior from ancient Rome is gonna look different from a warrior from ancient China. And that's just really nice to see. And the buildings all look unique and different as well. So that does really add to the visual appeal to Civilization VII. Besides that, I do actually kind of enjoy the meta progression, unlocking of the mementos and leveling things up, and I like unlocking things, and I think there are people who enjoy unlocking things as well, so that is a small thing that I do like. I don't think it's an absolutely essential big selling point of Civ VII, but after having played it for a while, as you play through the game and you unlock a new memento and it's like, oh, well, what if I use this next time? It sort of gives me another reason to jump back in and to try something slightly different, especially when you unlock something and then you realize, oh, wait, I've got a new synergy and I could go for that next time. That does add a little bit of a thing to go for, and it is nice that you can play without mementos in multiplayer. It's an option to turn it off, and you don't have to use them in single player, so the option to use them is nice. And unlocking things is nice as well. It's nice when you unlock things without having to pay money for them. Just good old gameplay unlocks. I much prefer that. Oh, and point 5, speaking of the previous Civ-specific unit designs and building designs, the graphical style overall, I think, is a great middle ground. So a lot of people like the more realistic, darker Civ 5, and then there was the more colorful, vibrant Civ 6, and a lot of people did enjoy that as well. I think Civ 7 does strike that nice balance where it is vibrant and colorful, but not too cartoony, and I personally think Civ 7 is sort of the, at least for now, you know, preferences change over time. Civ 7 does feel like a great middle ground for the gameplay graphics and the leader visual styles and animations. I think it is a nice resting point between being theatrical, being exciting and animated, but not going too far and still feeling grounded in reality. I do enjoy that. And looking at the game, it is pretty to look at, so that's a nice point. And also, in terms of the aesthetic, point 6, the music. Music for Civ 7 and music for Civilization in general, I think everyone kinda agrees that the music is good. And some people prefer the music from certain civilizations or others, but I think since ever, people have thought the music in Civilization games has been good. Civ 4 particularly, but Civ 5, Civ 6, Civ 7 music as well. The music is always solid, and each culture and civilization has their own musical themes and ambiances, and of course the main theme for Civ 7 is also good, so the music, good point for Civ 7. Point number 7 of something that I like about Civ 7 are the city-states. Now, I do think that they could be better, but I think as they are still a good point. So city-states in Civ 7, they pop up at the start of every age and they disappear at the end of an age, and the new ones pop up in the next age. And they are kind of a mix of the barbarians of older civs, but also the city-states of older civs, where they are these independent factions, and you can befriend them and you can levy military, and they give you certain unlocks, and actually unlocking and befriending a city-state gives you a big list of options of what you can get from them. There's abilities, there's new buildings, there's a lot of stuff that you can choose. So when you befriend a city-state, even if it's not the specific type of city-state that you're going for, like there might be an economic city-state and you're not playing the economy game, because the unlocks are so vast, you can always find something that will help you with your current objective and playstyle. So I do like the bonuses that you can unlock from these city-states. But I do think the idea of maybe these city-states growing into their own mini-civilizations could be a nice, interesting thing to go for. The city-states do sort of act like mini-cities. They do grow districts over time and all of that good stuff. But I would like to see maybe a bigger evolution of the city-states themselves through the ages as well. So Antiquity Age city-states, what they are now feels correct, but I think the Exploration and Modern Age city-states could be a bit more advanced and a bit more complex. But I still like how they are now, but I do think they could go a little bit further. Point 8 of something that I love about Civilization 7 is the unmonolithing of civs. So part of the idea of the civilizations, in some situations, for example with India and China, they have unmonolithed the civs. So what that means is that China is not just China for all of history, and India is not just India for all of history. The civilizations have evolved and changed through the ages, so having the Chinese civ go through, or giving you the option of going through 3 different dynasties in China and going through 3 different eras of Indian civilization, that does unmonolith the civs a little bit, and I do really appreciate that and I find that interesting. Though I think this will be linked to a point that I hate and don't like about Civ 7, but there needs to be more options, but we'll get into that in the point we don't like. But I do like the idea of splitting up the civilizations into more specific definitions. And although it'll never be completely historically accurate, because in real life, civilizations progress at a very granular gradient, but splitting them to 3 does help portray a more nuanced picture of the civilizations, and I do appreciate that. Point number 9 that I like about Civilization 7 are the narrative events and just adding a bit more story to everything. Like when the goodie huts now all have a little story attached to them, or the crises events where, okay, we're gonna be switching up ages and switching up civilizations. It does try to throw a story and reason and narrative event as to why things are changing. And this also does have room for improvement, for better stories, more interesting stories, because of course, after a while, once you've read a lot of the stories, you kind of get the idea and you just sort of look for which bonuses you want whenever you have choices, but it does feel nice having those choices where you get a goodie hut and you can choose A or B, and that's nice. Same with the city-states like I mentioned. When you get them, there's a choice. So it does give you a lot of these choices to make, story-wise and bonus-wise. It's nice having these narrative events where it's like, oh, the sheep have fallen to a plague. What do you do? You know? And sometimes it's like, continue the story, and then the story can unfold in a different way. I think there should be way more of it, because good narrative events and good stories really relies on just quantity in some cases, because you could have 5 really good stories, but then once you experience the 5 stories, okay, you know what the stories are. So you need quality and quantity, and the quality right now I think is pretty good, but I would say we would want a lot more. So you really can't predict what stories are going to be playing out in a certain game. And it would be nice to see this further expanded, but I do like the addition and inclusion of narrative events. And I'm not saying Civ VII came up with this. We've seen this in Old World, we've seen this in Humankind, we've seen this in other 4X games, but its inclusion into Civilization VII is a nice one. And finally, point number 10 for Civilization VII. By the way, these are not in any particular order, but point 10 is that gameplay-wise, the ages allow you to switch up playstyles through a game. And this is something that I really like, because quite often when I played older Civ games, I would commit to a playstyle. Like, okay, I'm going religion this game. And then after like a while, it's like, it's not quite working. And I want to switch up to something else, but I've already committed so much to this religion game, but it's not working. And I really want to change up, and now I regret being here, and now, well, I guess I either have to quit or stay with this obviously losing strategy. Whereas with Civ VII, because the ages do switch up, now there are problems with the ages switching, but I'll get to that in the things I hate about Civ VII, but the age switching does allow you to switch your playstyle as well. You could play a wide civilization going all in on military in the Antiquity Age, and then you get to the Exploration Age and say, all right, I don't want to do military anymore, I want to go all economic. And you just switch up the playstyle. Your cities revert back to towns, which in some cases is bad, but if you're going from a wide playstyle to a tall playstyle, you actually appreciate the cities going back to towns, because you don't want the cities anymore, you want them to be towns. So you can switch back to being a tall playstyle even after going wide. So you could have like 9 cities in the Antiquity Age, and then you go back to 1 or 2 cities and the rest are towns in the Exploration Age, and that allows you to play tall and maybe focus your expansion in the New World, or you just go all in on economy and don't focus too much on expansion. And then you can use that expansion, and when you get to the Modern Age, you can switch it up. And okay, we're not going economy anymore, we're going science. We're going to play science for the Modern Age. And I really do like this option of switching up your playstyles through the game, because maybe your Antiquity Age didn't go quite how you planned, and maybe military is not quite what you want to do this game. And by the time you finish the Antiquity Age, you're like, well, I wish I could switch it up. And then you reach the Exploration Age, and it's like, okay, yeah, cool, let's switch away from this. You pick a new civilization that goes for a different playstyle, and you change what you're focusing on. So the ages allowing you to switch your playstyles and gameplay through a single game, I do really enjoy. Okay, now for 10 things that I hate and dislike about Civilization VII. And I know a lot of you will be interested in this, so here we go. First, the UI issues. Yes, there's a lot of UI issues. Parsing information on the UI, the design, and how it's presented to you can be very confusing and at a glance hard to read and hard to parse and understand. And there's a lot of rough text or lacking info, like nodes being locked on leader attributes, and it just says legend unlock. What does that mean? Like, when you first play the game, you don't know what it means. You gotta start investigating to figure out what the UI is trying to tell you. When you complete a wonder, it doesn't actually say what the wonder does on the wonder spin around. When it zooms into the wonder, it says, you've built this wonder, great, and it's got a little flavor text, and it looks nice, but what does it do? Like, why doesn't it just tell you what it does right there? In older Civilization games, it would play the Wonder cinematic, and at the end of the cinematic, it pops up what the Wonder does mechanically in the gameplay. This one doesn't, so quite often you build a Wonder, and especially if you're new to the game, you've forgotten what the Wonder does. So it's like, okay, great, I've built this Wonder. What does it do again? And you have to go find what the Wonder does, when it should just tell you that. There's also places where it's missing tooltips, like, oh, here's something that's locked, and there's no tooltip that would tell you how to unlock it. Or some of the tooltips are just wrong. Now, they will probably fix the wrong tooltips over time, but a few days before launch, the tooltips were still wrong, giving information that's just not applicable or incorrect. Or just spelling errors. You know, there's tooltip problems as well. So the UI issues and just trying to understand what things are is a big hurdle with Civilization VII. And this is stuff that can, of course, be fixed over time, and it will likely not be true anymore in the future. But for launch, Civilization VII has a lot of UI issues. Okay, second thing I hate about Civilization VII is the age ending when you're about to achieve a big goal. So there's things that I've mentioned already that I love about the multiple age system, but there's a couple situations where the age ending provides a very unsatisfying experience. So for example, you're about to capture an enemy city, you're at war, and you're like 1 or 2 turns away from capturing a city, and then the age ends, the age is forced to end. And that means when an age ends, the war is reset. You're no longer at war. Everything goes back to sort of a new start in a new age. So you were about to capture that city, and if you captured the city, you would keep that city in the next age. But if you're like a turn away from capturing a city and the age ends, well, you don't own that city, and therefore you don't get anything. You don't get that city in the next age. So when the age ends, when you're just about to achieve a big goal, it's very unsatisfying because it's like, oh, come on, if I just had 2 more turns, I would have gotten the thing. And that can be very frustrating. Another very frustrating and feeling weird thing about the age ending, so point 3 here for things I don't like about Civ VII, is when an age ends, you lose your army on the age transition. So you could have 40 units attacking an enemy, and the age ends and your army is gone. So the more military units you have at the end of an age, the more you feel like you lose. And having played quite a bit of Civ VII at this point, it doesn't feel like it's a big setback. Like, it doesn't feel like all the production spent on those military units are no longer like, I lost a lot building that and now I'm behind for building an army, because it doesn't feel like I mechanically have been put on the back foot by building a large army and then losing it to an age transition. But it feels weird. It feels unfair. It's like I have this massive army, and then the next turn, I don't have an army. That feels unfair. I was charging this massive army into enemy territory and capturing cities and defeating their army and their units, and then suddenly it's over. And my army is not even back at my cities on standby, it's just gone. Like, the whole war is ended, okay. Even if that is balanced, even if they've made it to be balanced, that feels unfair. And it doesn't feel good going through that. So that's a pretty big one on what I don't like about Civ VII. Okay, moving on, number 4, something I don't like about Civ VII are lacking gameplay options. This is another one that could be fixed in the future and adding things in. For example, endless mode, map sizes could be bigger, map types could be more varied. When you're creating a custom game, you can not just change the game speed from online to marathon, you can also pick the age length, so how much needs to be done to push an age to 100% and force the age transition. There's a setting where you could set that as being short, medium, or long as well. You can set it to long, but I feel like that could be even more, like it could be even shorter or even longer. These sort of options I feel like should also exist. So there's some lacking gameplay options at the moment. Endless mode, where you can just play forever, that would be nice to have. Being able to load up a game with only you on the map. Right now you're forced to have at least one other player on the map. And I would like to have the ability to get into a Civ VII game with just me on the planet, because maybe I just want to play a building game where I just want to build up the entire planet exactly how I want and get a perfect build. So I'd love to be able to start an endless map on a huge map with just me and no one else. You know, that's something that I would want to do, and there's no option to do that right now, and I don't see why there wouldn't be an option to do that. So I would like to see these options added in for more gameplay styles. Point number 5 is going to be a given here for things I don't like about Civ VII. There's not enough civs. So when it comes to the unmonolithing of civs, which I did like about Civ VII, it sort of hinges on the number of civs. So for India and China, it's great. You can be India, 3 forms of India through the ages. You can be 3 forms of China through the ages. And there's some very notable civilizations which would help bridge some gaps here. And it's not that the people who don't like the Civ switching, it's not so much that they don't like the Civ switching, it's that the Civ switching is too jarring. Like, there's no Byzantine Empire, there's no Babylon, there's no Mesopotamia. There's a lot of civilizations that could be added in that would bridge some of these gaps. And if we had, for example, 40 civilizations, or for example, if we had 20 or 30 in every age, that would feel a lot better with these age and civilization transitions. And right now there's just not enough civs, and we know they will add more civs in DLC. And that's another point I'll get to in a bit, but we'll get more over time. But at the moment, there's just not enough civilizations, and that's kind of expected and kind of a given. Okay, point 6 of something I just don't like is that there's these low resolution, and very basic painted cinematics. When you win the game or go through certain events at the end of ages, there's just sort of a still painted image that zooms in or zooms out, or it has a very simple animation, and it's just a basic painted image. But especially in the copy I've been playing, it's quite low resolution, and I don't know if it's just because I've got a new 1440p monitor, but some of them seem kind of pixelated at times, like it seems low res. These cinematics, not only are they pretty basic, because we've gotten some very fancy in-game cinematics in previous Civ games, and these still image paintings feels like it's not quite good enough these days. They should at least not be pixelated, at least have them high res. A lot of the videos start zoomed in, or they zoom in through the cinematic, and when they zoom in or they start zoomed in, you can literally see the pixels of the painting, which means the video is not just 1080p, the painting that was done for the video, that was 1080p, and they've zoomed into 1080p. Like, it's just, the cinematics feel very unready, and hopefully they at least just put in a new one that's higher resolution, but also they feel a little lackluster these days. For another small point about Civ VII that I don't like, you can't rename cities, and just general customization options feels like there could be a lot more with your civilization and in-game look. There could be a lot of cosmetics and designs that could be added in for the options. When you're forming your religion, you can at least name your religion and pick symbols for your religion, and there's a good option there, but I feel like that could have even more options. But also, you can't just rename your cities or rename your units, and I guess maybe this could get confusing in multiplayer games or something, but have that be an option or something to disable or enable renaming of cities and units. But at the moment, you can't seem to rename cities, and that is like such a big thing in the Civ games, to be able to rename your cities. And also with the Civ changing and all of that, you might want to manually rename your cities to whatever you want, to match your new Civ or to match your old Civ or whatever. Not being able to rename cities feels like a restriction that doesn't have to be there. That is something that's kind of weird that it's not in, and it might be added in later, but it's kind of weird that it's not in already. Now, speaking of a bit on religion, point number 8 of things I don't like is religion is kind of tedious, and it's for very specific bonuses. So religion in Civ VII at the moment, and religion is one of those things which is typically expanded on in an expansion, but for the release version of Civ VII, it is very basic, where you get missionaries and you convert cities, and that's pretty much it. Your opponents will train up their own missionaries and convert cities. It's not like Civ VI religion where it got quite complex with inquisitors and lightning blast battles. And, you know, it actually got kind of fun having religious wars in Civ VI. But Civ VII doesn't really have that stuff, and it feels like it's something they might be adding in later on. But at the moment, you just basically convert cities in the exploration age. Religion isn't so much any kind of gameplay in the antiquity age or the modern age. It's a little bit there in the modern age, but it's not like the priority. It's the big thing in the exploration age. It can give you some bonuses, for example. They're very, very specific. It's like, oh, if you pick this belief on your religion, you will get +1 science per city tile that's a plane in enemy cities that have a wonder. And it's like, so it's so hard to understand, well, which one of these beliefs should I get? It's like, should I get the one where any enemy city that follows my religion that has a natural wonder +8 science and +8 culture? And it's like, okay, well, which one of my opponent's cities have a natural wonder in their border? Like, should I go look at every single one of their cities? Stuff might not be scouted. So it's like very, very specific bonuses. And sometimes they're a bit easier to handle. Like in a game I played, it was like, oh, any rainforest tile in another civilization city that's following your religion, those rainforest tiles will give you +1 science. And it's like, okay, so if I have a neighboring opponent who has settled cities or towns in the rainforest biome, then I should pick this belief. And it's like, that's one of the easier ones to understand. So the religion mechanic, it's somehow very basic, but also very tedious to just brain through all of that and to figure out what the right choice is because it's so specific. That's kind of just not super fun. It feels like the bonuses could be very big, so you feel like if you don't do it, you're missing out on something big, but also it doesn't make me want to do it. I feel like I have to do it rather than I want to do it. Moving on, point number 9 of what I don't like about Civilization VII is that there's no information age. Basically, the tech tree ends at rocketry, which is essentially around 1950 in real-life history-ish, just past World War II. The whole information age is not really there. It does feel like there is definitely room for another age in Civ VII going into the information age, and there has been some questions about how that could be done because the modern age already has civs like America and Mexico and Russia. So it's like, how do you go into the information age when those civilizations are already there? And if you switch age, you need to switch to another, but what would America become? And there are some ideas, like for example, America in the modern age, even the official descriptions of that civ does portray it as a new nation, you know, going through the American Revolution and going through independence and finding its feet and all of that. So America could, for example, transition into the USA or something. Russia in the 1800s is not quite Russia today. China going through the dynasties is not quite China today. So there is room to take those modern civilizations into the information age as new civilizations without losing them. Because the modern age right now has things like Prussia and Siam and various other civilizations that aren't really around anymore. It does feel like there is room for these civs to transition into an information age, and the modern age does feel like it's implying that it's not the final form of these civs. The fact that there's no information age has the game end feeling quite abruptly. For example, unlocking nukes. From when you unlock nukes, you could, for example, get a nuke in 5 turns, or you could do Operation Ivy in 10 turns. Basically, you unlock the win condition and nukes at the same time, and it only takes twice as long to win the game as it takes to build a nuke. So it's like there's not even any real time to build a nuke. You could build 1 round of nukes and throw some down, and essentially if you picked Operation Ivy at the same time, you'll win a couple turns later, right? Because you'll get a nuke after 5 turns, you could drop it on turn 5, 6, 7, and then you'll win on turn 10. You know, it's like, there's not much time. Like, you unlock things in the last 1% of the game. Okay, well, if we had the Information Age, then this would carry over to the Information Age, and we could then have a proper time to use nukes and have that actual modern kind of war. But the lack of an Information Age is weird. And finally, for point number 10, for things I don't like and hate about Civilization VII, is that there's too much content split into DLC, which I think is just a universal, yeah, okay, good. I mean, like, it's a lot of DLC, and it obviously works because people buy it. Civ 6 made tons and tons of money, and people are going to keep buying it, and people are going to keep selling it, so it does work, but it does make the game much harder to get into. It's okay, like, having more DLC and content coming in later on, and I understand why they do it, and I understand why it works, and I understand all of that stuff. And yeah, I think it's just something that people would prefer not having to pay for this stuff, but I also understand that they do need to charge for this stuff because you need to hit those profit margins, otherwise the game just doesn't get made. And it's not that you need that money to fund the game, it's that the people who fund the game would not fund it unless they can make that kind of money. So keep that in mind. If Civ 7 does turn out good and hopefully fix all of these issues, then it would be worth it jumping in. And that's why I always say Civilization games, they take 2 years and 2 major expansions before they're considered good. We will see, as we always do. On launch, Civilization 7 has a big spike of players, and within the month it will tank back down, tank way down to below Civ 6 numbers, and then it will slowly, gradually climb to the first expansion where there'll be a spike, and then it'll go back down, and then over the second year, it will slowly, gradually climb until the second expansion releases, and then there'll be a big spike of players. And then, at that point, 2 years in 2027, Civilization 7 will have more players than Civilization 6. And that's what happened with Civ 6 to Civ 5, and Civ 5 to Civ 4. It's the same thing every time. Generally, if you're not really into what Civilization 7 is right now, you don't have to get it. If you really want to get Civ 7 but you're not in a rush, well, the game will be complete in 2 years. In 2027, after the second major expansion, a bunch of DLC, and at which point you could probably get the game at 40 to 60% off when it goes on sale. So that's always a plan if you want to do that. There we go. There are 10 things that I love about Civilization 7 and 10 things that I hate about Civilization 7, and I suppose you could consider this a review of some kind. Hope you found this interesting or useful. If you did enjoy this, please do consider subscribing and checking out the other Civilization 7 videos on the channel. Hope you enjoy all of it. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you there.